The Lakers, Kuz, and AD both have what we call inversion or inwards ankle sprains, which puts stress on the lateral or outer aspects of the ligaments on your ankle or the talus curl joint. Specifically, there's a ligament that's most commonly injured called the ATFL, anterior talofibular ligament, and it takes on the most stress during that inversion movement. So, with both these guys, they both had mild injuries. Let's go through each case. With Kuz, he came back in the same game. Then he played 5 games, but then he's been having persistent soreness and discomfort. Now, I made a video on Kuzma for Laker Film Room going into this topic, so if you want visuals, you can check that out. But essentially, there's always a risk with an ankle sprain, any ankle sprain. When you play through it, it can lead to some persistent soreness and discomfort. Now, if the medical staff sees that soreness and discomfort increasing over time rather than decreasing, it's prudent to nip that in the bud by allowing a player to take some games off and address it. And that's what happened in Kuz's case. He played through it initially, kept having some of that soreness, kept being assessed, and the medical staff decided, okay, let's shut him down for a little bit, let him completely rehab it, and then come back. So the idea is to get out in front of the injury as quickly as possible in that sense. And Coach Vogel said that Kuz is now going through his return to play progressions, might have a full practice with the team, which typically is a precursor to playing, so he might play Sunday with the Nuggets. Now in AD's case, he also had an inversion sprain, played through it, sat out the following game, unlike Kuz in that instance, but then played for last night versus Milwaukee and very well. According to Vogel, he was playing through pain. The key thing here is going to be how that ankle is responding today. And kind of like Kuz is using that discomfort, pain, and soreness as a barometer for the ankle moving forward. So the medical staff, in terms of treatment, you're going to be using hands-on treatment all the time for range of motion, mobility, strength, and then pairing that as well with dedicated rehab for the ankle. A lot of that's going to be ongoing balance training, and then in-game, you can also use taping as well to take some stress off that ankle. So again, as these guys keep playing, AD last night really gutted it out. At the start of the game, I could tell that he was moving slowly. There was a rebound with Giannis coming weak side where AD kind of just looked at Giannis go by him, and he decided, okay, I'm going to let him have this one. But then as the game went on and he got his rhythm and his feel back and that ankle started to warm up a little bit, he definitely got into more of a rhythm, and that's not uncommon with ankle sprains, because when you first put stress into something, it can have a little bit of a pain or discomfort response, but as you keep playing, it will subside. A key thing with both these guys moving forward, and why the medical staff will keep a very, very close eye on them as well, is that there are very high rates of re-injury when the ankle sprain is not treated appropriately. With both these guys, they're in really, really good care, led by Judy Seto, who's great at handling injuries during the season, with her extensive experience managing a lot of Kobe's issues, and so they will stay on top of it. But re-injury risk is certainly, in my experience, the hardest thing to prevent, and there's some research studies showing that upwards of 73% of players re-injure the ankle, with the caveat that a lot of those players were not treated effectively. And a problem, what can happen is that any ankle sprain, regardless of severity, when not treated correctly, can develop into persistent symptoms and or discomfort and or lead to something called chronic ankle instability, or CAI, that's characterized by feelings of weakness, poor confidence, and instability in the ankle, also known as kinesiophobia or fear of movement, which can then impact someone on a longer term basis. And that's always the risk reward when it comes to ankle sprains. That's why I always recommend to anyone listening, or anyone, any patient that I see, any player that I see, any parent that I see, any coach, any kid, hey, if you sprain your ankle, we got to get it treated right away, because we put in a little bit of work now and it can save you a ton of grief later on. And then fortunately for Kuz and AD, they have that constant vigilance from the medical staff who is handling their injury. And it becomes now a case of risk reward in terms of what they're seeing from the player, what symptoms the player is having, what he is or isn't able to do, how the ankle is responding, and then judging, okay, does that person fall within the parameters to be able to play? And then, of course, as we saw with AD in Milwaukee, you run through your on-court progressions and you see how they respond, and that's the final last check mark to say, okay, this player's ready to go. So moving forward with Kuz and AD, I know you might be thinking, hey, they let Kuz play through all these games, but then, he got this persistent soreness, the same that happened to AD. Not necessarily. Every person responds differently. The fact that they now held out Kuz for this long of a time to get out in front of the injury and be conservative, to me is actually a good sign of a medical staff that was assessing the entire way. Once that injury went a certain way with the soreness, they said, okay, let's shut him down. And so I think that bodes well for the team in terms of how the medical staff is handling injuries, because it is walking a tightrope. And it's all about making judgments, especially with ankle sprains. A lot of these things live in gray areas, and that's why the trainers and medical staff in the professional world have to make really tough decisions. It's all about assessing risk and reward and then moving on from there. All right. So that does it for this shortened episode of The Scope. Hope you enjoyed it. My name is again Dr. Raj. You can find me on IG and Twitter at 3CB Performance. And I'll check you next